It is one of the most bizarre murders that we've dealt with in a very long time.
A beloved second grade teacher murdered.
70 times to me is absolutely overkill.
The accused killer, a one-time valedictorian, pre-med student, and the victim's son.
But he was aiming for specific parts of her body based on his medical knowledge, being a pre-med student. So that also tells me that there was thought that went into this.
What's more, there's video of the suspect carrying the murder weapon.
I think the first thing that I was thinking about this was how unemotional he seems and how unapologetic.
And a near immediate confession.
Tell me exactly what happened.
But investigators are still scratching their heads, wondering what led up to the shocking crime.
It's really hard to see that there's anything in this family's background that would have led to this behavior.
This is 46-year-old Elvia Espinoza, a second grade teacher at Ben Hill Griffin Elementary School in Frostproof, Florida. According to those who knew her, Elvia was a beloved member of the community, an educator for decades, and a mother of 3. Her youngest son is 21-year-old Emmanuel Manny Espinoza, who in 2020 graduated as valedictorian from the same district she taught in. Here's Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd.
He was the 2020 Frostproof valedictorian with a 4.5 GPA average. He was quoted at his high school graduation by saying, "High school was just one of the chapters out of the many we will have throughout our lives. We still have so much to accomplish in the future that will define what kind of legacy the class of 2020 will leave behind." That's right. He was described as being a genius, of being remarkably brilliant. He was a pre-med student in his 4th year at the University of Florida. The next chapter of his life was to be a medical doctor. I want you to understand she was really the perfect mom. I want you to understand that she was very proud of his accomplishments in going to the University of Florida, graduating #1 in his high school class. And then I want you to understand that he viciously murdered her and confessed to it.
Manny later told investigators he talked to his mother regularly, about every other day, so it was normal to hear from her.
Mom called on Saturday morning and said, "Manny, I haven't seen you in a while." They would text about every other day. "I'd like to come up to Gainesville to see you." And he said, "Well, Mom, I'm visiting grandfather this weekend. He has an event, so I'll be down your way." She said, "That's great. Why don't you stay with me at the house?" And he said, "Sure, I'd love to."
The University of Florida is in Gainesville, about 3 hours north of Frostproof, where Elvia lived. On April 8th, Manny made that drive.
He said that he had just been angry or not liked his mother for years and years. When we said, "Do you love her?" He said, "Oh yeah, I love her." "Do y'all get along?" "Yeah, 8 out of 10 we get along. But I've wanted to kill her for years, and I made up my mind as I drove from Gainesville, today is the day." And he then showed up at the front door.
He's caught on Ring camera video approaching his mother's front door. You can see Manny walk up with something behind his back. As the video goes on, we learn it's a knife that investigators say he used to stab his mom.
Notice behind his back, there's the knife. He tried to open the door, and the door was locked, so he knocked on the door, and his beautiful mother was so excited to see her son, she opened the door. The second she opened the door, he charged in and started stabbing her.
Polk County investigators say Manny stabbed his mother in excess of 70 times, all without saying a word.
And then he told the detectives in his confession that he had cut his hand on the knife while stabbing his mother. And as he's standing at the kitchen sink washing himself off and the knife, he wanted to ask his mother for the Neosporin for the cut on his hand. But he noticed she was dead. He immediately called 911 and confessed.
Tell me exactly what happened.
I killed someone.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, tell me exactly what happened.
I killed someone.
Only seconds into the 911 call, Manny admits he stabbed his mother and repeats this fact multiple times.
How did this happen?
I opened the door and I stabbed my mom.
And by the sound of the call, he's confident his mother is beyond saving.
All right, so we need to try to render aid if we can, okay?
That's fine.
Okay, I'm wondering. Okay, well, we're going to try to render her aid, okay?
All right.
Is she awake?
Nope. You bled out.
Okay, is she breathing?
Nope.
Do you think she is beyond any help?
I do.
To understand the case better, I sat down with former CIA officer and FBI agent Tracy Walder. Is there any defense that he can really bring after he already confessed?
That's a really actually great question. There's several defenses. Obviously, there's really only 6 that you can employ, right? I didn't do it. I did it out of self-defense. I did it because someone else made me do it. I don't think any of those are going to work in this case, but it sounds like he is refused a public defender and does not have an attorney of his own. The only thing that I could possibly see is if an attorney got involved, they might encourage him to utilize the insanity defense. But even if he utilized that, he'd have to go through a really rigorous testing process because that's how it works. And I'm not sure that they would deem him to be insane.
But investigators say there weren't any warning signs.
We have gone back and searched his room at UF, and we don't see any information there, any notes, any communications that are indicative of this conduct or planning of such a murder. And obviously, we will, as part of the follow-up investigation, as you understand, this happened just Saturday afternoon.
It doesn't seem that there's reports of, police activity at their home in the past, right? All of those things would probably be easy to see. Again, I don't know what his juvenile record was like because it's probably sealed. So I don't know if there were things going on there. That would kind of be my one, I guess, question mark, if you will. Yes, it seemed, I don't know, exactly the types of conversations that he was maybe having about his mom to other people. I think that might be very telling. But it's really hard to see that there's anything in this family's background that would have led to this behavior.
Even though the crime feels completely out of the blue, it's possible Manny did some mental planning. One day, he just decided that he was going to go kill her. He said he'd been thinking about it a lot. Would that make it premeditated?
So in my opinion, yes, as him saying, utilizing those statements, which are all admissible statements, him saying this is something I had thought about, but I finally did it, right? Him, actually having a plan, right? Leaving school, coming home to do this. All of those things can definitely point towards premeditation. Because typically in a case like this, where you see someone being stabbed 70 times, which is the case here, multiple times, those are a lot of times fits of rage, right? So then they're not always premeditated. But in a case like this, he also made a statement too, I believe to the 911 operator, but I can't be certain, that he was aiming for specific parts of her body based on his medical knowledge, being a pre-med student. So that also tells me that there was thought that went into this. Premeditation doesn't have to be planning weeks in advance. It can be planning a day in advance. And I think they could make a case there.
Is it possible that his background in the medical field, studying biology and human anatomy, could have led to her death? And exactly what you were saying, he knew where to stab her for it to be fatal?
Sure. I think that his background If this was something he was thinking about for a while, which he indicated, his background could have been made him more confident in terms of, I hate to utilize this word, but being successful in killing her. It maybe made him more confident in doing so because he knew, you know, which places to stab her to ultimately kill her. However, 70 times, I don't think that you have to be, pre-med student to know that stabbing someone 70 times just from simple blood loss will most likely kill them.
Is 70 times to you overkill?
70 times to me is absolutely overkill. I don't want to say it's rare, but we hear about people being stabbed 40 times, 50 times, 70 times is definitely rageful. So he clearly has rage in there. And in my opinion, it's definitely overkill.
Then there's the strange request about Neosporin. He noticed during all of this that he had a cut on his hand during the stabbing, and he went to ask his mom for Neosporin and then realized that she was dead. That really stuck out to me as something very startling. What do you make of that?
And I also think that's kind of to what we were talking about earlier, where I see an insanity defense being employed. Because then that would mean he's disassociated, right, from his own actions, and he doesn't understand what he has done. The problem is in something like that, the degree of premeditation that there is here isn't going to go well for him in regards to the insanity defense, because then that also points to the fact that he knows what he did was wrong. And so that's where I think things are going to get really complicated, because you're right. That is very much disassociating from yourself, from your actions, all of those things. Not realizing that your mom's dead, who you just stabbed 70 times, but asking her for Neosporin. All of those things do point to insanity. But then at the same time, you have someone who had their wits very much about them to get into the car, to plan this, to stab her in places that he thought she would die. And so I think that's where there's going to be some conflict here.
But there's still a lot of question marks in the case. I do have to wonder what led up to a rage-induced stabbing like this, because if we talk about his mom, the victim in this case, she was an elementary school teacher, apparently beloved by the city that she taught in, knew a lot of families, and she had even volunteered to go visit her son on his campus because she wanted to spend more time with him. So it doesn't sound to me like she was a rage-filled person, but perhaps it was just her son that was.
It's hard to say because, and again, that will help with using the premeditation against him. The idea that she did offer to come to visit him and he said no, he wanted to visit her, is all going to help with building that case about premeditation and that he was probably thinking about it. It doesn't seem to me that their relationship was that acrimonious. I believe he's made statements that he's just simply found her annoying. I think a lot of us find our parents annoying at any phase of our lives, but that doesn't translate into overkill like we've seen in a situation like this. And we don't know, obviously, what went into his upbringing and what was going on in this home, but it sounds by all accounts there was nothing that maybe happened in his past that would have triggered something like this.
And does it make it more of a crime of passion because it was his mother that he killed?
Yes, I think it probably does make it more of a crime of passion because it is someone that he's close to, right? And it is someone where there's obviously emotions involved and there is a huge degree of overkill involved as well.
With Manny's confessions already on the 911 recording, it's not quite as important to determine what led up to the murder, at least not from a legal standpoint. So is determining a motive going to be something important for investigators to do?
In my opinion, in this case, no. Because the reality is you have an individual who's been stabbed 70 times and you have someone who has admitted to that crime. And so really motive in a case like this, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because clearly motive matters, but it's going to matter more in terms of the type of defense that he employs and the ultimate sentence that he's trying to get.
And the location of the crime could make a big difference in the sentence. We know that this happened in Florida, so there's a possibility of the death penalty.
Yeah.
Is this something that prosecutors might seek in this case?
In my opinion, yes, but that's where I think the insanity defense is really going to be utilized. But that depends on the type of representation that he employs as well. He could very well defend himself if that's something that he wants to do. I think the issue is the death penalty is very much on the table, particularly in a case like this. However, if he uses the insanity defense in a case like this, then they wouldn't be able to give him, if he's convicted and deemed to be insane, they wouldn't be able to give him the death penalty.
But before that, there's still more investigative work ahead. Is this going to be a lengthy investigation moving forward, or is it something that could be wrapped rather quickly?
In my opinion, I think it's going to be wrapped up rather quickly. Yes, I think they're going to look for motive because, again, as an investigator, law enforcement, you're always thinking about, how is the defense going to defend this individual? And you are always trying to make sure that your case is sort of like locked up airtight, if you will, to make sure that you get a conviction in a case like this. But this is going to be pretty easy because I believe they also have him on Ring doorbell camera as well, with the knife in his hand and his hand cut from the knife. So you've got him on camera, you have him on the phone, and you have his phone records putting him inside the house. So I really think this is going to be pretty easy.
And according to Tracy, it's possible Manny could have lashed out at someone else had he not been arrested. Is it possible that if he hadn't called 911, let's say he escaped and had not been caught, that he would be a risk of hurting someone else based on his actions toward his mom?
So I believe so. I believe someone that's capable of that, in my opinion, and capable of that kind of overkill could absolutely be a risk of someone else. If he did this, and again, we don't know for sure, but if he did this simply because she, quote, annoyed him, and that was a statement he made, then who's to say what he would do to a friend, a colleague, a professor? And so I think that in and of itself is highly problematic, and that he is very dangerous to society.
After Elvia's death, Polk County Schools put out a statement saying, quote, "Her students and colleagues greatly loved her, and her sudden, unexpected death is a devastating loss. She was a very special part of her school family." Her son was charged with first-degree murder and right now is being held in the Polk County Jail without bond. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.